welcome back to 360 Sports Network. I'm Greg Bichero, and with me tonight is James Dotson, and on assignment covering the Steelers beat in North Carolina at Bank of America Stadium is Alex Bell-Iverson. Gentlemen, how goes it out there?
Going well here. We avoided the hurricane in Happy Valley, but I'm not sure you're so lucky down there in NC. What are you doing, Alex?
Well, I'm gutting it out here with the weather, and these two ball clubs have me busy. So this has been a pretty interesting experience, to say the least.
Oh, no doubt about it. Ron Rivera's got a good challenge there on his hands there with the Carolina Panthers. And by the way, how'd the stadium fare after that hurricane went through there? Is everything going to be copacetic there for a game tomorrow night?
Yeah, everything's perfectly fine. There's been no damage, and most importantly, no one was hurt. So that's the most important thing.
There we go. Well, tonight we're going to be discussing our top 10 wide receiver picks for fantasy football because, as you well know, if you haven't drafted your fantasy teams yet, this is the time to get the draft done. Right before Labor Day, the traditional drafting of the fantasy teams itself. So, with that said, we're going to start with James. Who are your top 5 wide receivers at this particular time frame?
Well, I start out number 1 with the obvious pick of Andre Johnson. He may have tanked during the fantasy playoffs last year, which made his owners angry, but he's still by far the best option at wideout, and he still has Matt Schaub throwing him the ball, so he'll still get 1,500 yards and 10-plus touchdowns without much question. So pick him first with confidence as wide receivers go. Number 2, I debated this one for a while, but I ended up deciding to put number 2 with Calvin Johnson. His only issue last year, he had 2 weeks where he had only 1 reception. But even still, with no consistency at quarterback, he had 12 touchdowns. And I'll tell you what, Stafford is looking amazing right now in the preseason. So I expect big things out of the Motor City for Stafford and for especially Calvin Johnson. Number 3, Roddy White. I think Julio Jones will both help and hurt Roddy White. I mean, he'll take away coverage from him, but that means he'll also take away some targets too. So I'm a little shaky on Roddy White, but I think you'll still get 1,300 yards easily for sure, double-digit touchdowns. He's still a top-tier wideout. Number 4, Greg Jennings, also an easy top-tier wideout, but I've been seeing him drop out of many drafts top 5 or even 10 wide receivers. And he's still with Aaron Rodgers up there. And last year, with no supporting cast around him, he put up insane numbers. So I like Greg Jennings early, and I think he's going to be a great play up there in Green Bay. And rounding up my top 5 is Miles and Miles Austin. He's been a freak since jumping on the scene 2 years ago, and he's just entering his prime. I know this is a lot higher than what many people will put him, but with healthy Romo back in action and just lots of talent down there in Dallas, I see Miles Austin putting up big numbers. Double-digit touchdowns for sure down in Big D. So that's my top 5. What do you think, Alex? Agree or disagree?
Well, I don't think Miles Austin is a top 5 wide receiver. He'll be a pretty good wide receiver, but I think number 5 is kind of a stretch. Number 1, I have Andre Johnson. Despite missing 3 games in 2010, he managed to notch 6 games of 100 or more receiving yards, and I mean, he is a beast. There's no other way to put it. He averaged more than 80 catches a season over his 8-year career, and no one can touch his production the past 3.5 years. He's also the centerpiece to one of the game's most prolific passing offenses. So the same as last year, he's one of only a few receivers I would probably take in the first round. Number 2, I actually have Roddy White. I would have Calvin Johnson number 2, but if I knew Stafford wasn't going to stay healthy, I'd feel more comfortable putting that at 2. But the thing with Roddy White is with 7 games of 80 or more yards in 2010, White proved to be a fairly dependable option for fantasy owners. He set careers high for yards and receptions, and for the second straight season, he reached double-digit touchdowns. And for the past 4 years, he has been one of the most targeted fantasy receivers in the league. And I know fantasy owners are worried that the rival Julio Jones will cause White's numbers to take a dip, but I wouldn't panic. He's still the number 1 receiver clearly in Atlanta. And if anything, Jones will still waste some of the attention teams put on White before. So I don't see any cause for concern there. At number 4, I actually have Hakeem Nicks. This year, he has been penciled in as Eli Manning's number 1 target for the Giants' passing attack. He's a viable role in the offense that likes to set the air on fire. So as long as Mario Manningham and Steve Smith are in place to keep defenses honest, fantasy owners should believe Nicks can take his game to another level, which I could believe is an elite level. Next, I have Larry Fitzgerald. His value to fantasy owners got a little better as soon as Kevin Kolb came to the desert. I think it will be a pretty good combination there. Last year, he still managed to get 90 receptions and almost 1,200 receiving yards, despite having a quarterback most people didn't even know. So now that Kolb's there, I think things will really start to click. And that rounds out my top 5.
Wow. That's pretty good there. I think we're all in agreement, though, I think, with number 1 being Andre Johnson being up there. That's who I have as my top wide receiver in the fantasy drafts coming up here. Andre Johnson is part of what I call the new triplets down there in Texas. They moved from Dallas over to Houston, where you have Schaub, Johnson, and Arian Foster. And Andre Johnson is just going to continue to provide incredible excitement. So I've got him as number 1. I've got Roddy White at number 2. And when I was initially doing this, I had him rated at number 2, and then I went to the Steelers game against the Falcons, and that solidified my number 2 pick in the fantasy draft for Roddy White. He catches anything in his zip code. And he is an outstanding option there for Matty Ice. And with that said, Julio Jones is going to take some catches away from him, but it's also going to make Roddy White even more of a valuable player there in Atlanta. So expect some big numbers out of Roddy White. Number 3, Hakeem Nicks. Now, if you've been watching the Giants, as I've been watching the Giants, this team, they don't have it together, and thank God it's preseason. But with that said, Hakeem Nicks is the number 1 target of Eli Manning, and Eli Manning is too good of a quarterback to let a bad preseason, throw everything up and basically cause mass confusion and chaos and the world ending, the whole 10 yards. So Hakeem Nicks is going to be a reliable number 3 out of the top 5 of my book here. He's going to put up some big numbers for Eli Manning. So draft him with confidence there. Number 4, Calvin Johnson with the Lions. What can I say? This guy, if Stafford stays healthy, but even if Stafford doesn't stay healthy, Calvin Johnson's there. I mean, the guy's just a gamer, and there's no reason why he can't put up a 1,500-yard season this year. But if Stafford stays healthy, it's going to be a lot more fun. Let's just put it that way. And number 5 on my list, Larry Fitzgerald. This guy, he's got a quarterback down there in Kevin Kolb. He is the featured receiver. He is pretty much the offense down there in Arizona, down there in the desert there. So Larry Fitzgerald I have as my top, rounding out my top 5, coming in at number 5. And James, I have to smile, though, whenever you put Miles Austin there, because I know how much you love the Dallas Cowboys. And maybe you're drinking their Kool-Aid there, but we'll let you drink the Kool-Aid. So who do you have there from 6 through 10?
Well, drinking the Kool-Aid may be one way to put it, but with all the talent that they have down there, I gotta give them some credit, and I like what I see. I like the possibilities. Don't put all
that stuff, please.
Don't put all your eggs in the Dallas basket, though. We know what happens when the injury bug hits.
Oh, yes.
Well, starting at number 6, I start right where you ended with your top 5 with Larry Fitzgerald. Alex, maybe you can join me on this, but I think with Randy Moss's retirement, I'd like to nominate Larry Fitzgerald as to be the new owner of the title, The Freak. Would you agree with that?
No, only because there'll only be one freak. Fitzgerald is still, I think, a little shorter than Moss is. Moss was more of a, aired-out type of go-deep player. Fitzgerald's all around. So in a sense, Fitzgerald can be better.
Well, if Fitzgerald's better, maybe Super Freak. Is that better for him? I don't know. I just see some of his catches, like the diving one-hander we just saw in the last preseason game, and I just shake my head. He just became the highest-paid wideout in NFL history, and he pretty much got to handpick the quarterback he wanted to come down there. So I expect big things from Fitzgerald this year. Number 7, I have Deshaun Jackson. I was a little worried at first due to his holdout. But he just makes too many big plays and averaging, 20 yards per catch last year. So when he gets the bombs from Vic and a couple of reverses and screens, and you've already got a huge week for fantasy points. So you can't eliminate Deshaun Jackson from your choices here early on in the draft. Number 8, this is where Hakeem Nicks drops for me. And the only reason I do is because I'm not an Eli Manning fan. The only lucky part is that when Eli throws interceptions, it won't cost Hakeem Nicks any points. He is still a playmaker, though, and the top target out there, so he's still definitely a top 10 pick for sure. Number 9, this is where Reggie Wayne falls for me. I'm going to give a little spoiler alert. Peyton Manning is going to play all year, and I don't care what anybody says. So that makes Reggie Wayne a solid pick nearly anywhere in the draft. I just think that Manning does spread it out a bit too much for him to be anything more than a number 7, 8, 9 type of receiver here as far as receivers go. And then rounding out my top 10 is Dwayne Bowe. And I think he could have been a top 5 contending wide receiver this year with the addition of Baldwin from Pitt. But I think the locker room troubles make it more difficult now for both Baldwin and for Dwayne Bowe, because it makes me wonder how much time Jonathan Baldwin will see. And I think that was going to draw a lot of coverage away from Bowe. Now the defenses can shift over there, and Bowe's just going to attack too much attention to be any higher. But he's still going to get double-digit touchdowns because he's too big of a red zone threat. So could be top 5, but safely in the top 10 as far as I'm concerned. What does your 6 through 10 look like there, Alex?
At number 6, I have Greg Jennings. He's coming off arguably the best season of his career. And after a slow start, he managed to post 8 or more yards in 8 of his team's final 11 regular season games. Add in a pair of 100-plus performances and some gutsy catches in the playoffs, and he may now finally get the respect he deserved for some times. He'll benefit from a resurgent running game this year thanks to the return of Ryan Grant and the development of James Starks. And word is that Jennings has been working out with Arizona's Larry Fitzgerald this offseason, which should only strengthen his appeal to fantasy owners. At number 7, I have Mike Wallace. When it comes to an NFL nickname, his 60 Minutes moniker is actually one of the best in my opinion. I mean, this dude is fast. I mean, he's the fastest player in the NFL. He had 60 receptions for 1,257 yards and 10 touchdowns last season, and I expect his production to be even higher this year, especially since he's playing for a contract. So I think Mike Wallace is going to have a very big year, and I have him at number 7. Number 8, I actually have Reggie Wayne. I expect him to have another big year. He is a seasoned 11-year pro. And like his quarterback, he's been one of the most durable players at his position, playing a full 16 games each year since 2001. And I know there is some concern if Peyton Manning's going to be ready for the season, how he'll hold up during the season. But let's say if Peyton Manning does go through the season in fairly decent shape, then Reggie Wayne is clearly a top 5 wide receiver. Next up, I have Vincent Jackson. The thing is, it really didn't take him long to find his way back to the upper reaches of these rankings that I have. He played in only 5 games last season, but he's back to his old self in San Diego and ready to reclaim his role as Phillip Rivers' number 1 receiver. His effort against San Fran in Week 15 last season was all I needed to see to believe it. He had 112 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. So he is one of the most imposing receivers in the game. He's a difficult matchup for defensive backs, especially in the red zone, and he has a long history in the Chargers offense. So I think he'll be back and ready to have a good year. And at number 10, I have Miles Austin. I know you like him better than that, but the thing is, with Tony Romo's return to action, he will have a good year, not enough to put him in number 5. So with Romo returning, he does become a great option. His production dropped off last season after the team transitioned to John Kitna, and the Titans' offense was that's to be expected. He only had one 100-yard game, and that was after Week 7. So when both Romo and Austin are on field, they can be a pretty good tandem, and that rounds out my top 10.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, coming in at number 6 on my list here, Alex, I have Reggie Wayne. Only because of the difficulties right now that Peyton Manning is having with his recovery. I've taken him out of the top 5 consideration and put him in number 6. They've been, the Manning to Wayne duo has been in existence here for the past 11 years, and it'll probably go on for another couple more years, but we'll see how this all pans out. We'll see how well Peyton Manning recovers from his neck surgery, and how well Indianapolis does. Reggie Wayne is going to be a big part of this, so he's definitely a top 10 caliber guy. Number 7, got Greg Jennings with the Packers, and yes, I have heard the same report that Greg Jennings is working out with Larry Fitzgerald. But you know, Greg Jennings is the big play guy down there, not down there, up there in the frozen tundra, and he's a big part of that offense. So yes, he's got Donald Driver out there. Yes, he's got Starks there, and there's going to be opportunities spread around because Aaron Rodgers does spread the ball around quite a bit. But Greg Jennings is going to get his fair share. He'll put up some big points. So I have him coming in at number 7. Number 8, Dwayne Bowe. This guy last year, in one of the most memorable tears in history, scored 13 of his NFL-leading 15 receiving touchdowns over a 7-week time frame, which was just absolutely incredible. The guy definitely has it. You can say all you want about all the hot-headedness issues with Baldwin and Bowe and the whole Kansas City thing, but you know what? They're gamers. They're professionals. They're going to score some big-time points. Watch out for Kansas City. Dwayne Bowe is going to be on a tear, and he's going to have at least another 15-yard season. Not 15-yard, 15-touchdown season. I should hope he has a 15-yard season. But,
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. But no, he'll have definitely a 15-touchdown season this year because he is one of the main cogs in this offense. Number 9. Actually, it's very difficult here coming up with a top 10 because number 9 and number 10 are so very close. I got our 16-minute man, Mike Wallace, coming in at number 9. He is one of the fastest men in professional football right now. And he's definitely a fantastic outlet for big men. So I really see him just turning it on and just, assuming his rightful place as the at least a number 2 receiver, if not a number 1 receiver there in Pittsburgh. So we'll definitely see, I think, a fall off in production from Hines Ward as Mike Wallace basically takes that torch and goes and scores lots of points there for Pittsburgh. And number 10, the second fastest man in professional football, Deshaun Jackson with the Eagles. Michael Vick puts on a freak show whenever the offense is on all cylinders down there. And Deshaun Jackson is definitely part of that freak show itself. It's almost like watching a Madden NFL game in fast forward, the way they play down there, or over there in Philadelphia. So with that said, Deshaun Jackson, he was a bit streaky last year. He had some bad games. He had some good games, but he's definitely going to be a major factor. He will definitely score you points, and he is top 10 caliber in my book. So that rounds out my top 10.
Nice.
Gentlemen, looking over all of our predictions about the top 10 here, who do you see, and they may not be in your top 10, but who do you see as the breakout receiver, the sleeper guy, the dark horse that's going to basically make things happen there make a fantasy owner very happy?
Well, before preseason, I had Ocho Cinco as a breakout receiver. I didn't expect Randy Moss 2007 numbers. However, this preseason, he's been kind of struggling. He only has 2 catches. So if he gets on track, he'll be a breakout. If things stay the way they are now, I don't even think he'll be much of a factor. I mean, he's just letting balls go right through his hands. But if I had a number 1 breakout as of now, I'd actually say Anquan Boldin. Todd Heap's not there. Derek Mason's not there. So he's the number 1 target. We've seen what he can do in Arizona. His debut with the Ravens last year was kind of a disappointment, but since those guys are gone, I think it's all Anquan Boldin. And also, let's not forget about Percy Harvin now that Sidney Rice is gone. He's going to be the number 1 receiver there. So those are my 2 breakout receivers.
Interesting. How about you, James?
Oh, well, you know me, and I'm going to have to say a Cowboy real quick. And Dez Bryant is, in my mind, the best athlete on the Cowboys, which are full of playmakers. And he's the most gifted of them all. He's fast. He had a Rookie of the Year season easily until he got injured. So keep your eye on him. But my main sleeper is Wes Welker. He was best when he had Randy Moss taking away coverage. And that just allowed him to exploit the underneath game and average almost 10 catches a game. And so I think having Chad Ochocinco, Johnson, whatever he wants to call himself right now, I think having him there is going to make a huge difference for Wes Welker. And I think you can easily see well over 100 catches again for Mr. Underneath. And then if you need one more wide receiver in the last rounds, especially if you're in a touchdown-heavy league, don't forget about our Dancing with the Stars, our guy who's always smiling, Mr. Hines Ward, because he is always a red zone threat. And if Roth doesn't find him the first time, he scrambles out of the pocket, and somehow Hines Ward is always open in the back of the end zone. So if you need one more wideout late in the draft, don't hesitate from taking our big friend 86, Hines Ward.
That's interesting. All I have to say on who's going to be the dark horse this year, all I have to say is this: what can Brown do for you? And I'm talking about Antonio Brown with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was doing some homework, some research on all this Saturday night, and just absolutely amazed me, the athleticism of Antonio Brown. And I also read a report that he and Mike Wallace run neck and neck. So we're talking about perhaps having a third speed burner out there in your fantasy receivers, of course, with Mike Wallace, Deshaun Jackson, and now Antonio Brown. And having 2 speed burners on a team like the Steelers, this guy is going to break out. And you know what? If you're in the mid-rounds and Antonio Brown is still on the board, Brown can do a lot of things for you. So that's my dark horse pick there is Antonio Brown. And since everybody's been giving 2 dark horse picks, I'll take another dark horse out there and take a look at Michael Crabtree. I really think that this guy, he's got a tremendous ability to gain yards after a catch. He gets a ton of yak. Once we get Harbaugh's in position over there. This guy's worked wonders with quarterbacks out there. I really think Alex Smith will finally settle down. I'm hoping and praying he'll finally settle down and be consistent out there. And Michael Crabtree, I think, will have a fantastic season. Draft Michael Crabtree with confidence in your 6th or 7th round. Crabtree will do you well as well. All right, Alex, well, thank you for all your insight. I know you got to run down there. You've got to do some more interviews and meet up with some coaches there from both the Carolina as well as the Steelers staff. So I expect a full report back on the desk once you get back after the Labor Day weekend there. So best of luck down there. Don't have too much fun. James, it's always been a pleasure. I got to smile, though, whenever you draft the Dallas Cowboys the way you do. But, hey, you've got some good points there. So For Alex Glaverson, James Dotson, I'm Greg, the mad scientist, the show. Have a great day.